Hey, today we are comparing two sets of data. So for this first problem, we have Miss Webb, the spelling bee coach, is preparing her class for their first spelling bee scrimmage. She needs to determine which student should be this spelling bee captain. The top two spelling bee student scores are recorded in the table. Miss Webb analyzes the scores and calculates the approximate mean score and standard deviation for each student. Now we need to calculate the mean and standard deviation for each student and advise Miss Webb on who we think should be the team captain and why. So we are going to need to calculate two sets, one for Maria and one for Heidi. So I'm just going to label those to start off with. And for each of them, we're looking for the mean, which I'm going to write as this X bar, which is how it shows up in the calculator, and then the standard deviation, which is that ponytail X. So I'm going to start with Maria. I'm going to grab my calculator. We need to enter the data here into our calculator. So if you recall, to find mean and standard deviation, we have to start by hitting stat enter, and we need to put all of Maria's scores into L1. Once we have that, to find the mean and the standard deviation, we press stat, we go right to calc, we select number 1, which is one variable statistics, and then you press enter. And this big list should come up here. So the values that we care about are this first one, which is the mean, the X bar, so that's 83.6. So her average score is 83.6, and the standard deviation, this last one here, is ponytail X. We are going to round that to the nearest hundredths place, so that's going to come out to be 10.08. So those are Maria's values. To find Heidi's values, we need to go back into our table here, clear these values, and start all over again with Heidi. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now that I have Heidi's values in my calculator, I'm going to again press stat calc 1 and enter to get her values. And then I'm going to write them here. So our X bar, or our average here, is 82.9. And then her standard deviation is 16.75. So now that we have that, let's talk about what these values mean in the context of this situation. Maria has a higher average at 83.6 versus 82.9. So I'm just going to make a little note down here. So Maria has a higher mean, or a larger mean. Maria also has a smaller standard deviation. Standard deviation is a measure of spread. These two values give us an idea of how spread out our data is. So if you look at Maria's scores here versus Heidi's scores, I know it's a little hard to tell when they're not in order, but I do notice that Heidi has more scores above 100 than Maria does. Maria only has 1 and Heidi has 4. However, Heidi also has more low scores. You can see she has 360s. And Maria does not have a 60. It looks like her lowest score is a 67. So this standard deviation tells us approximately how spread out our data is. Because Heidi's standard deviation is larger, that means that her data points are spread out. She has more higher numbers and more lower numbers. What this tells me is that Maria's low standard deviation means that her scores do not deviate from her average as much as Heidi's does. Because of that, I would recommend that Miss Webb makes Maria the spelling bee captain. And the reason is because her standard deviation tells me that she is more consistent than Heidi is in her scores. So I'm going to write, I would recommend Maria as spelling bee captain because her lower standard deviation implies that she is more consistent. While Heidi has a chance of scoring higher, she also has a chance of scoring lower. And Maria is going to score more consistently around her average than Heidi will. So with Heidi, you're kind of taking a chance, but with Maria, it's a little bit more guaranteed that her scores will be more consistent.